Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Left Curve podcast. Today we have with us Amadeo brands, and basically the Left Curve is an attempt from Radar Blog to make crypto and Web3 knowledge possessed by industry experts, much like Dio, and thought leaders, accessible to masses in simple terms, minus the jargon. And now in crypto world, Dio, it's easy to get lost in confusing information. So we wanted to create something that would have helped us when we first started. Now you have been an educator, a code builder, and a researcher for numerous different notable protocols across Web3. That's when we thought that we should invite you as well, because your current focus is restaking. It's one of the hottest topics across Web3, and ironically few people understand it. You're also building YieldNest at the moment, which we'll go into more detail later on, and contributing to the LRTFi ecosystem at large. Now before we start, let me preface that none of what we say is financial advice. We're just enthusiasts. Please do your own research before making any investments. So Dio, welcome to the show. We're really delighted to have you. Would you mind giving an introduction of yourself as well?
Hi guys, very happy to be here on the Left Curve podcast, and it's really cool. I mean, Adonis know each other for some time now, and working together with YieldNest and everything. It's been a blast. Who am I? Like, I'm Amadeo Brands. I'm from the Netherlands, but right now living in Thailand, in Bangkok. My journey, I'm a software engineer, and I started software engineering and economy, and I did entrepreneurial things. I worked for bigger software companies, I worked for banks, and actually around 2000 and I got in crypto in 2012, 2013, and very early on, but I didn't really understand it. And I think it's a completely different phase than then, right? Like for me, then I got into crypto, and I was this software engineer, and somebody came to me like, "Oh, you really need to learn crypto. You need to understand cryptography. You need to start mining. You need to buy Litecoin." Like, there's a very different kind of grassroots phase where people would give each other papers and would make each other kind of upset against the government, or like saying like, you don't trust banks, don't trust institutions, they're all fucking you over. Like, we need to build a parallel financial universe, and, Bitcoin is a thing. Okay, got into that. And then around 2015, 16, I went completely into ETH, basically, right? Like before the whole hype. And for me, crypto clicked when I was working at a semi government institution in the Netherlands, where I was building mortgage insurance protocols for the government, semi government institution, right? And I saw that, okay, wait a minute, like all these complex systems can actually all be replaced by smart contracts, right? I'm not going to go into all the technical details there, but when I was working as a software engineer at this institution, this financial institution, I realized that smart contracts are going to change finance forever, right? But that back then, I also realized we're still very early. So what is the most efficient thing for me to do to get into the space, get active, and learn? Well, I started working for a hedge fund. So I was a researcher. So I went from this IT, like a software engineer, to more like a researcher, researching all the different GitHubs, researching all the different like technical things behind all these different projects back in 2016. So that was like a very crazy time, because then in 2017 it completely exploded, and we had this fund that we were managing, and we made 17,000% gains basically. So that was like insane, for like an insane experience. But it learned me a lot about crypto and finance, and everything just clicked together. So yeah, I would say, like, to anybody that wants to get active in crypto, just start to do things. Like, use your background in any field you have, and really start to understand why we are building this. And I think that kind of helps me surviving in this industry and keeping active and keeping interested in it, right? Because the problem in the industry today is there's all this short-term thinking, buy a meme coin, sell a meme coin, and just like, yeah, and I know it's called the Left Curve podcast, but it's a lot of Left Curve. I would love for us to be a bit more like, but why are we doing all this, right? It's the same question of like, why do you want to make $1 million, right? Why do you want to make that much money? Like, why do you do that, right? It's a very deep questions you should ask yourself, and then like apply that into your work field and see like, okay, where can I focus my attention? And then crypto will reward you with that long-term thinking, and then you will survive, right? You will not survive in crypto by just buying this meme coin, that meme coin, because in general you will probably lose money, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people do not see. For every person who makes money on any kind of short-term token, a lot of people actually lose money as well. But yeah, coming back to interest, my name's Adonis. I'm one of the co-founders of Trader Block. We're a Web3 native growth agency, and unfortunately, we do not have Lingo on today because he's in transit. But at the same time, I'm happy to be carrying forward this discussion with you as well. So jumping right into it, Dio, you also already covered like what was like the landscape of crypto like when you first started out. Gosh, I wish I could see 70,000% gains right now at this point of time and this point of the cycle as well. But
70, 70, not 70.
70, yes, and
Yeah.
insane. And on top of that, I think that this cycle, I think one of the biggest innovations has been restaking, right? I think the 2021 cycle had, of course, a lot more in number. But speaking of this innovation, I believe that we first need to start out with the differences between what is staking versus what is liquid staking and what is restaking, because a lot of our audience, they may know about entire smart contracts known as eigenlayer, for example, or any of its competitors, but they want to begin from like grassroots levels. So can you please explain like what would staking look like, what is liquid staking, and then what is restaking as well to our audience?
Yes, and I have a deck prepared, but I will first explain it high level, and then I will open my deck and we just go walk over all the steps there. Okay, so for understanding what is restaking, we first need to understand what is a blockchain, right? So a blockchain is nothing more, nothing less than a state machine, right? We need to come to some sort of a consensus, and we need to lock data, right? It's a very simple process. And the first blockchain, Bitcoin, is using proof of work, and there's a bunch of kind of miners running and producing math formulas that are basically a state machine, right? So it's like we having hashes, and then people doing transactions, and then there is a proof of work algorithm that is then uh, taking these kind of transactions and putting them into blocks, and then we have a blockchain, right? And why this is very beautiful is because when I do a transaction or when I write something to this blockchain, it's there forever, right? So it's called read once, write once, read many, right? So that when you write something to the blockchain, it's there forever, right? And that's a very huge innovation because it's very difficult to know what is the truth, what is reality. And with a blockchain, I can hash some data onto a blockchain and I can prove that, like that actually happened, right? And that money element is kind of like the biggest use case, or first use case. Like I hash something on this state machine where I can say like I sent one Bitcoin to Adonis, and that's kind of in that ledger forever. So that's really good, and that's very useful and very powerful. And in order to get that service, like in order to make this so that nobody can attack it, you have something called hash rate. So hash rate means there's a lot of miners that are doing these computations, right? And when we have the state machine, and when I send this one Bitcoin to Adonis and we submit this to the Bitcoin blockchain, all these miners and all these nodes register that, and there's no way for us to revert that. So it's like I did that, and it's there forever, and that's very powerful, right? So now moving to proof of stake, as we know, like Ethereum also was proof of work before it transitioned to proof of stake. This was always in the works, and I think it's a good thing. Although I think it's good that proof of work is still there, like Bitcoin, I think it's also always going to be there. But there is a reason why there is no other proof of work blockchain algorithms, right? It's because these algorithms get attacked a lot, right? Like there's still some smaller ones, like Bitcoin Cash is somehow kind of still around. There's some other proof of work mechanisms, but you can see they're not performing that well because it's slower, it's more energy intensive, it's easier to attack, you can reorg. I'm not going to go into all these topics now, but proof of stake is much easier to roll out. That's why we're also seeing an explosion of L1s. We're seeing explosion of L2s because deploying a blockchain with a proof of stake algorithm is much easier because you can just say like, oh, I'm just going to run it on 5 nodes. There's a proof of stake, so people will kind of state truth, right? So Where first in Ethereum or in Bitcoin, you had to just buy these computers that mine like hash power, and then like some people might attack it, right? Because you have really the only thing you have at stake is that hardware. You have to buy hardware, and that hardware that you buy is not even that expensive, right? Because you buy some hardware, and with that hardware you can start mining, and with that, if you don't have enough hardware, you can even attack the network, right? The only thing you will destroy then is your own hardware, right? In proof of stake, you're running hardware, but hardware is actually quite easy to run, similar for Bitcoin. But in Bitcoin, they put this proof of work into it, it makes it complicated. In proof of stake, they kind of remove the complications and just say like, well, instead of making it complicated and let you buy this really expensive hardware, we're just gonna say you have to stake a certain amount of money on this computer that's gonna manage this blockchain. And then if you decide to do something shady or if you try to attack it, we're gonna take away your money, right? And you can see that, in my opinion, it's a much better algorithm, because in proof of work, it's like if you do something malicious, nobody really takes your money. What's happening is that the money just gets destroyed. In proof of stake, you can do multiple things with that, like slashing, right? We call it slashing, where you penalize somebody for doing certain things, right? So I would say, proof of stake. Now we have this commitment of like, oh, we're giving money, and we have a machine that runs something, and then we have Ethereum, and then we have Solana, and then we have Sui, or they're all proof of stake blockchains. So EOS was a delegated proof of stake, and then from proof of stake you have delegated proof of stake. Binance is kind of delegated. Binance Smart is kind of delegated proof of stake, but they're moving back to proof of stake. Ethereum is full pure proof of stake. Solana is kind of delegated proof of stake. There's many different variations of that we're not going to get into, but I would love to like explain maybe in a second episode deeper on all these other nuances there. But keeping it simple, right? So we now understand there is a machine that does like computations, and there's stake, right? So people stake on that. So if something goes wrong, they'll get slashed. So this is proof of stake. Okay, that's been running for a while, and that's been a huge part of the Ethereum blockchain, right? And then we have to think like, what does it actually produces, right? Well, what does a blockchain produce? Well, a blockchain produces nation level state resistance. If I deploy an application on the Ethereum blockchain, right? If I write an application, if I write something there, there's no nation state, there's no person, there's no entity that can actually remove it, right? Or there's nobody, if I make it fully automated or something, there's nobody that can even stop it, right? So that's a very, very, very powerful thing. And that's very valuable for people. That censorship resistant, right? That self-sovereign censorship resistant money is very important for people. Well, then there's a lot of variations there, where in Solana, they kind of say that, okay, we can only use 100 computers to do that. And Ethereum, there's 800,000 computers to do that, right? And then like there's a lot of variations to that, right? So how secure do you want to have your money? That's why hashing that data on ETH is very expensive, because many people want that extreme security, or on Bitcoin, right? And on other chains, it's a bit cheaper. Okay, well, now we understand why it's valuable, because we get nation level state resistance. We get instant settlement. Like if I send money, like I don't have to go via intermediate. Like I can go outside of all this legal and regulation bullshit, right? I can just directly deal and do whatever I want to do, right? Without anybody telling me I cannot do that. Like it's a complete free for all, right? And that has some downfalls, because that also attracts a lot of like coy boys, or maybe more negative things, right? But yeah, so that's positive. Then I hope now I get proof of work and proof of stake is clear, right? Adonis, do you understand that, or did I go too deep?
No, I think that was perfectly fine.
Perfect. Okay, now restaking. So what we do with restaking is, we know that this kind of like immutability and nation state level resistance is very powerful to use, right? So we can actually take those security guarantees, right, and put that into other applications. So what it means with restaking, we can take the security that Ethereum provides and embed that in, for example, a computer game, or we can embed that into an NFT that's maybe on a less secure chain than Ethereum. So we can take that really high level of security from ETH that's very valuable, and we can export that to other layers, to real world assets, to other things. So it actually is going to open up a whole new stack of possibilities. And I have a slide and explainer that I will explain more in depth. So, but I found it necessary to go this deep. Yeah, and restaking is nothing more, nothing less than exporting that high valued economic security to other applications, and then you can restake and use your money on that layer one to earn extra yield by lending it out, or like kind of putting it at stake on other like applications, right, than Ethereum. But it's still secured by the Ethereum blockchain. So we can, me and Adonis can make an agreement. We can say, okay, if the podcast takes, let's say, if the podcast gets more than 1 million views, I'm gonna pay Adonis 1 ETH, right? So we can now actually put this into a credible commitment on ETH, immutable, without any legal representation, and have this economic gain play out in real life and hash that into a blockchain. And then we know for sure that, okay, if this specific podcast reaches 1 million views, Adonis gets 1 ETH from this wallet, right? We can now hash that credible commitment on the blockchain and actually execute it as well, right? And this was a problem actually beforehand, where we could hash data in smart contracts, but smart contracts are dumb contracts. Smart contracts are really stupid because they're very smart. Yeah, smart contract is the right name because they're a contract and it's smart, right? Because you can do more things with it, but they're not thinking, they're not doing things for you. They're just very submissive, right? They're like, you have to tell them what to do, and they can only do things that you tell them. So they're not going to do things by themselves. But with restaking, that we can restake to an external, like this agreement, like, hey, I'm going to stake 1 ETH in this contract. Then I'm going to pay Adonis 1 ETH, right? And Adonis is like, well, I don't know if I believe you, if you're really going to do that. Well, then there's maybe other people that are witnesses to this agreement that me and Adonis make now. And then other people restake their money into that contract and say, okay, if that happens, then Amadeo will send 1 ETH to Adonis. Else, the people that are staking to that will get slashed, and Adonis will get his 1 ETH anyway, right? But like, in order for Adonis to trust me, they will need to see that money is there, right? So, yeah, that super high level what restaking is, I would say.
Very, very, very interesting, especially the ideas of how it's so interesting that you can take security from one of the most secure blockchains in the world, and you can basically export that to other applications as well, and other middleware as well. Especially because in crypto, all of these things have been notoriously the vectors of hacks and attacks time and time again as well, right? So I think now that we've covered like the basics of what staking is and what is restaking, I think we can go a little bit deeper into it as well. So we hear the word eigenlayer quite a lot. I'm pretty sure a lot of people who are even quite native to crypto have had a chance to look into eigenlayer, maybe go to their socials accounts, but haven't really dug deep. So can you describe to us the roles of different components of eigenlayer? What does it do? There are a lot of words in there, such as operators, ABSs, and where do LRT protocols come into the picture as well?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question, right? So we were really deep into that, and I'm not going to make it a bit quicker. So basically, we have a restaking protocol. So what I just said about that agreement, right? I'm going to pay Adonis 1 ETH if this agreement happens. Well, a restaking protocol kind of facilitates these kind of agreements, right? So a restaking protocol makes it easy for me and Adonis to set up these agreements, right? So a restaking protocol is nothing more, nothing less than this kind of a protocol that helps us set up these commitments and export the layer one security from Ethereum to other chains, right? Or to other chains or to other components outside of blockchains. And that's what EigenLayer does. So EigenLayer is a restaking protocol, right? And it's actually also, again, like EigenLayer now is a foundation, does a token, but at some point it's just software, right? So at some point it's just a piece of software that lives there, that gets maintained a little bit here and there, but it's just there, right? Similar to Ethereum or Bitcoin, it's just a protocol, right? And then what is a liquid restaking protocol like YieldNest a liquid restaking protocol kind of says like, oh, there's all these credible commitments that are being built on this restaking protocol, right? And it's going to be hard, like if you're going to say like, oh, I'm going to commit to this agreement, I'm going to commit to that agreement, there's a lot of complexities there to manage, right? So what does YieldNest do as a liquid restaking protocol? Well, first of all, we work with all the other we work with all restaking protocols like Eigenlayer, Symbiotic, which is also a restaking protocol, Karak, and many others that are Nectar, etc., many others that are coming out. And we make sure that if you give us like capital, that we will find these kind of like agreements that people make with each other, or applications that need this kind of export that security of, that we are going to restake for you in the lowest risky way with the highest return. So we still want to get a high return for you, but with the lowest risk possible. So we will pick the agreements and the applications that have the lowest risk, but have some rewards, right? And that's what YieldNest does. Yeah.
Very interesting. Can you also explain the roles of operators and AVSs as well? Because a lot of people may have gone through the white paper, they must have seen that, and they must have been like, well, what is this?
Yeah, that's a good one, right? And I call them actually restake applications, right? Because like there's so many different variations of that. And in order for me to explain it better, I think what helps best if I just share my screen a little bit,
Please
and
go ahead.
we can go over that, right? Okay. So in Eigenlayer, but in any restaking platform, you have restakers, right, or LRTs, because you can even be a restaker that does it themselves, like someone like a home staker from Ethereum, but restaking is actually a little bit simpler, but also way more risky. And then you can actually give your money to a node operator, and then the node operator is running these AVSs, right? Because it's similar, going back to that example that we just gave with the agreement between me and Adonis, we need a witness. We need something that is going to check how many views does this podcast have, right? That's what the node operator does. A node operator does something either on-chain or off-chain, it's certain operations, and the agreement of these operations are hashed on-chain, right? And then you restake to this node operator, and the node operator picks the certain AVSs, networks, or different applications. I call them actually restake applications that are running on this node operator, and that's it. And then YieldNest is in the middle, and we're trying to kind of make this whole multi-sided market where there's multiple players, multiple angles work. And what basically then happens is that the AVS or the network or restake application, that I call it, is paying money to the node operator for like, oh, I want you to run my software, or I want you to run or monitor my agreements, right? And then the node operator gets the funds, and it's kind of automatically split to the restaker and a bit to the node operator itself, right? So the node operator doesn't want to cheat because, one, he has a lot of money restaked to himself, so he has this position of trust, right? He doesn't want to lose that. And he's potentially losing his own income, and he's potentially losing his own stake, because node operators oftentimes also have to stake themselves into the node operator, right? So the node operator needs to run the software. Then the restaker gives money to the node operator, and there's many different node operators. And the restaker, or the LRT in this case, YieldNest, will select the node operators that we like the most. I think this is more. I think restaking is not going to be a retail thing. I don't think there's going to be that many like retail restakers, because it's quite a complex thing, and you could easily lose money, because if you, as a restake or an LRT or an NLRT, which is a native liquid restaking token, give money to a node operator and there's going something wrong with the AVS, you can lose money because you get slashed. It burns money, right? So yeah, that I would recommend to use an LRT, or at least do your research, right? So there's money to be made because the AVS pays money to the node operator, and the restaker gives the capital at risk here, right? And when then something goes wrong, the restaker and node operator kind of get slashed, right? So and that will kind of bring the trust back, right? And it is all settled on ETH L1, right? You could also say, well, this application is not that mission critical, so we're just going to use a restaking application on layer 2, because these agreements, as you can understand, hashing the agreement on chain, all that stuff, especially if you do it on layer 1, it's going to be very expensive, right? But then again, like, you want to really have to cross guarantees, because maybe this is an agreement of $1 billion and not just of one ETH. Is $1 billion involved? Well, then you're going to probably hash on ETH. You could make the argument like, well, if it's less important, we could also use something like Binance Smart Chain, or we can use another layer 2, right, for hashing that agreement on. So restake protocols will be something that we will see on many different layers. Yeah.
Very, very interesting, you. I think this was like especially helpful. And can you also, talk to us a little bit about YieldNest as well? Now that you have covered like staking, you covered restaking, you covered
Yeah.
the layer architecture as well, briefly. So I think now it's like fair that you should also kind of talk to us a little bit about what YieldNest is doing. How is it different from other LRT protocols at this point of time? Also, any alpha drops or any future developments that you can share with our audience today, that you guys are working on the background, that our audience can expect to see go live on YieldNest very, very soon.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Let me dive into a deck. I prepared a small deck. I used this as a keynote when I was in Singapore at Token 2049, and I'm gonna redo this presentation here as well. So basically, YieldNest is a liquid restaking protocol, and I call it restaking beyond the hype, right? Okay, yeah. About YieldNest, so YieldNest, yeah, as I said, liquid restaking protocol, and we give the best risk-adjusted returns. That basically, when you restake your money with YieldNest, we're going to automatically look across all the different restaking protocols where the highest yield lies, or where you can farm the highest airdrops, or where you can basically make the most return on your capital in the most low risk way, right? And we do that across restaking strategies and DeFi strategies. So we're kind of combining it a little bit, right? We're not going to go super crazy with the DeFi strategy, because we're going to want to make the base products very low risk. But we're definitely going to kind of rebalance, so that there's always this extra juicy yield that you can get. You will, if you now go to our website, app.yieldnest.finance, you will be able to see that as well. So I recommend everybody to go there, and you will be able to see. I'm quickly going to show it, right? So this is our website. But you can see here, right, earn up to 5%, 3%, 14%. So you can see right there, and we encourage people to, one, get the base yield, and then you can either choose to stay in there, and there's like, we will rebalance between all the restaking protocols, or go a level higher, take a bit more risk, and go into a curve pool, still low risk, or do other things to get higher yield. But that's basically up to you. The goal and the vision of YieldNest is that we want to become the asset management layer for protocols, institutions, and individuals, right? All right, restaking, we just talked about it extensively, and there was this huge bull market in restaking that we climbed up to $21 billion, right? So that was fantastic. But currently there's a lot of market distractions, right? One, the restaking TVL is going down a little bit, right? And there's constant people pushing points. There's explosion of like new protocols. The products are very overcomplicated. There's no AVS yield, it seems, and there's no overview of like the whole ecosystem, right? And I kind of show this kind of graph because we're pumping points. Like, what did they do to us? Like, oh, restaking, oh, this, or that, or that. DeFi is becoming this Ouroboros, this like self-eating snake of like, okay, I'm here, I just want to make money, right? Like, no, we're here for something bigger than ourselves. We're here to make self-sovereign money possible. What I also started my talk with, right? Like, if we do not give a lot of utility to the things we build, why are we building it in the first place, right? So, YieldNest wants to be the next primitive, wants to be like the next Aave or the next Curve, or like something that adds value to the overall ecosystem. That's why we're here, because at the end of the day, while we're here, we're just all trying to like kind of coordinate here these money flows, right? And when we do that in a way that we all kind of stop, if we all stop staking at banks and we all start restaking and staking into a blockchain system, man, like the amount of money and revenue and volumes and everything that we get are going to be so huge that's going to be a whole economy in itself, right? So I'm super bullish for the long term, but we need to not lose why we are here, right? But of course, this is not necessarily why people restake, because people restake because they see a higher yield, right? But it's important to understand there's definitely something here, and I'm just going to highlight and recap all the things that I just said, right? So what is Restaking? I'm just going to recap it a little bit, right? We started with Bitcoin, as I said, a proof of work blockchain with basically one application, money, right? Then we had Ethereum with like kind of smart contracts, with a new kind of proof of stake algorithm that came out after a while, and we had a bunch of really cool applications that we were building, right? Now we get rollups, so that what it means that with rollups on Ethereum or other chains means that you get the security, the consensus, and then a lot of different execution clients, so you can go to Arbiter and Base, etc. What Eigenlayer and Restaking does, it makes that we have that shared security staking relayer, base layer, right? That kind of like the base layer that, in my opinion, should be Ethereum, ETH, because it's high settlement assurances. And then on top of that, we're building multiple consensus layers because of Restaking. We can, as I said, these credible commitments. So we can say like, okay, we're using the shared security module, and we're having, you have just ETH itself, just the ETH blockchain, which has a limited capacity, but very, very secure applications. They get rollups. Well, rollups are a bit less secure, but they have multiple execution clients. But and then with Eigenlayer, you can even pull it apart even more, and you can build whole new consensus algorithms, right? So just to highlight that. But the real reason why we're all here is because we want to get the highest possible yield with the highest possible with the best risk-adjusted returns, right? This is often like forgotten, all the noise and all the technical talk, right? But it's important to keep that in the back of your mind, like why we're here. And you should probably not listen to the project that only give like this shiny yield thing, because then it's mostly they're trying to scam you, sending a fake. Yes, we can make a high yield if we all go to this new system, and we all need to do that together. So as you can see here, we offer really high yields on, like, for example, a curve pool or our like convex pool, right? And let's go back to the basics. Like what YieldNest wants to do, we want to make simple, secure, decentralized, and profitable projects with that ethos, with that core ethos, and with that right mindset and that culture and that soul in mind. And what we are creating is basically this product range. We have YN BNB on the Binance Smart Chain. We have YN ETH, YN LSD, YN USD, and YN BTC. These are like the 5 base YieldNest created products. They form the basic foundation of like, hey, you can restake these assets, and underneath there's like yielding assets of all of them. So they all have this base yield with a little bit of extra restaking yield. And from there, we're going to build all these kind of cool new kind of strategy connectors. So this is maybe a bit too technical, but what's going to happen is that you restake your ETH or your stable coins, and then it automatically goes into these strategy vaults. And then here's an example, YN BNB, where it goes into, you just buy BNB, you then go to Sliss BNB, you stake it, or any other like staked Bitcoin variant, and then it automatically goes into the Karak kernel binomial restaking, and it goes into the max yield, YNB max yield vault. So we're going to PancakeSwap, we're going to go to Lister, Venus, Aave, Gamma, etc., etc., etc. And that is kind of the end goal that we're fighting for. And we're doing that all in the most secure possible way with the YieldNest risk team, which basically keeps everything super clean and secure for everyone. And yeah, that's really cool. And yeah, that's my presentation. And I hope everybody wants to check out YieldNest and see all the cool products we're building, and enjoy the high yield that you can get as a restaker with either ETH, BNB, or LSDs right now. And the YN USD and YN BTC products are coming out very soon as well.
Okay, I think you kind of sneaked an alpha there with your BNB chain deployment announcement as well. Really looking forward to that as well. And also on top of it, somebody might see this and think, oh wow, this is super cool. I really want to kind of do something similar. So if anybody wishes to like start building in the LRT space, what advice would you give to them as well? Because you've been running the show at YieldNest for quite some time. There must have been a lot of unforeseen challenges as well. It's quite difficult. It's a nascent sector within a nascent industry altogether. So what advice would you have for someone who's like just getting started in like the restaking ecosystem?
Yeah, so I would actually, I would actually recommend looking more at the AVSs, right? So there's a lot of opportunities there. If I would not have an LRT right now, I would probably start to look or build an AVS, right? Because there's so much money now, like Symbiotic, Eigenlayer, all these protocols raised a bunch of capital, and they're all looking for these applications that can be useful in the blockchain space or outside. So what is really nice about what Eigenlayer offers, and but also YieldNest would love to help everyone with, is to build more like applications, like build an application that maybe does something with supply chain, with like restaking, or does something with other like, what is your field, what is your expertise? Think about it, and then see if you can apply some sort of a blockchain solution to that. And then probably with an AVS and restaking, you can much quicker build it than before. Before, if you want to build something, it requires much more funding, etc., etc. So it's I would recommend people look into networks or AVS, as I call them, restake applications, right? Look into building restake applications. The
Right.
LRT space is also interesting. If you have like strategy or ideas, you can actually build on top of the YieldNest protocol, because YieldNest is also a protocol building on top of the Eigenlayer protocol, right? So that's all these different protocols are forming. And then if you have a really cool strategy idea or something, then join Discord, go there and share that with us, and maybe we have a bounty for you or some yeah.
Very interesting. Very curious to see that your answer was to build like an AVS, because of course it seems to be like monetarily like the best solution out there at this point of time. I think one question I always ask everyone who's on this podcast is, who other Web3 personality or Chad would you like for us to bring on the Left Curve podcast as well? Can be anyone from any industry across crypto.
Ooh, yeah. Well, I like to. There's many guests I would like to propose, but yeah, I like to see Sam from Frax. I like to
Ah,
see there, or uh, maybe not, like maybe like somebody that kind of caliber. I would love, and maybe like a DeFi dad or something. Yeah, good at space.
definitely. Definitely somebody people to like reach out to on our end as well. And I think it was super interesting chatting with you as well, Dio. I think for our audience, if you love the show, please do give us a follow at RadarBlock. My account personally is 0x Cyril. Make sure you follow our guest Amadeo Brands at Amadeo Brands, and the protocol YieldNest at YieldNest Finance. Thank you so much, Dio, for being a part today. I think we really enjoyed the conversation.